Hi, I'm Lily Rigoli, and in this short video, I'll be talking about our paper titled Co-actors Exhibit Similarity in Their Structure of Behavioral Variation that Remains Stable Across Range of Naturalistic Activities, which was published in Scientific Reports in April 2020. So when measuring any human movement or behavior over time, the resulting measurements always contain various magnitudes of natural variability, including in the spatial accuracy of an individual hitting a nail with a hammer, or an individual's stride length when walking or running. Even an individual's head and postural position while sitting or standing still fluctuates over time. It has become relatively well accepted that variability in human behavior is not random, but rather has varying degrees of persistence, where pink noise, also called fractal or 1 over f, is commonly observed. And this structure is thought to reflect the fact that the stable macroscopic patterns of human behavior emerge from the dynamic, multi-scaled interaction that characterizes agent-environment systems. Thus, any given measurement of behavioral variability should involve the influence of some combination of these interacting processes. And these varying degrees of persistence and mostly fractal structure have been studied in a variety of tasks, usually involving hundreds or even thousands of repeated trials. Some examples of this are tapping to a metronome, reaction times, walking, and speech. And here I show some examples of time series with varying degrees of persistence. And pink noise has been associated with adaptive, flexible, and robust behavior. However, a more recent body of research is beginning to show how intention, constraint, and task-related complexity can affect the degree of persistence observed. And this table shows the basic idea, where differences in constraint result in different degrees of persistence. For example, low constraints resulting in pink noise or fractal structure, and moderate constraints resulting in white noise or random structure. And more recently, research on fractal structure and persistent structure in general has also begun investigating the degree to which interacting individuals exhibit similarities in their structure of variability. And the way this is done is to have participants engaged in some kind of behavior together, get the index of their overall structure of variability, and then see how correlated they are in that structure. And the idea here is that two co-acting individuals can exhibit matching in their overall complexity, or a sort of global coordination, without necessarily exhibiting local coordination. And this has been investigated in the context of side-by-side walking, conversation, tapping, pendulum swinging, and more. So this project aimed to address a few gaps in the literature. First, the types of tasks or activities typically used to study the dynamics of variability aren't always a good reflection of the messy, complex everyday tasks that make up everyday life. So this study utilized a range of everyday tasks outside of the laboratory. And we had two main aims. The first was to assess whether the structure of human behavioral variability is sensitive to changes in environment and task constraints. And the second was to see whether the structure of two individuals' behavioral variability becomes more similar or aligned during the completion of everyday tasks. The experiment was comprised of 5 naturalistic activities, all on campus, for participants to do either alone or in pairs. The first activity was walking up and down sets of stairs in the stadium, including some walking within the stadium. The second was a free-form activity in the student center, where participants could do whatever they wanted for 15 minutes, and this included things like sitting, walking, conversing, using their phones. The third was the more complex goal-directed activity in which participants had to find a set of specific items in the library that spanned multiple floors. And the fourth activity was a second free-form activity, this time in a garden area. And finally, the fifth activity involved participants walking across campus. The data we recorded was acceleration at the non-dominant wrist using an Empatica wristband, and acceleration at the waist. For the data analysis, we used a windowed detrended fluctuation analysis to get an overall index of the structure of variability. This analysis works by breaking up the data into windows of increasing sizes, calculating the linear trends within each of those windows, and then plotting the variance as a function of window size on a log-log plot. Then the slope of the best fit line to this plot is the alpha value, where an alpha of around 1 corresponds to pink noise or fractal structure, and an alpha of approximately 0.5 corresponds to white noise or random fluctuations, and then an alpha above 1 corresponds to brown or hyperpersistent structure. And the time series were very long, so detrended fluctuation analysis, or DFA, was computed using sliding windows, which resulted in a time series of alpha values. And this plot shows some examples where for each activity, there's a time series of alpha values shown in red. And from this, we computed the average alpha value of the time series, which provided the index of overall structure variability. We also computed the mean acceleration using a windowed approach as an overall linear measure of motion magnitude, and this is shown in blue. To address our second aim, we also assessed the degree of complexity matching that occurred between members of a pair to index the degree of similarity in their structure variability. This was done by simply calculating the cross-correlation between the co-actors' time series of alpha values. And to confirm the validity of the complexity matching results, we also performed the same analysis on pseudo-pairs that were created from the actual pairs, as well as pseudo-pairs created from the individuals who completed the experiment by themselves. The results I will show are from acceleration at the non-dominant wrist. The acceleration at the waist produced a very similar pattern of results, which can be found in the supplementary material for this paper. So here we have the results for mean alpha and mean acceleration. For mean alpha on the left, you can see that the overall structure of variability was wider or less fractal for the two walking tasks, whereas the two freeform activities have more fractal or more persistent structures of variability, and the library activity falls between the two walking and freeform activities. And this pattern of results was the same for both pairs and individuals. And for mean acceleration on the right, as expected, we see that the two freeform activities, the student center and garden, had lower mean acceleration than the other activities. We also see that the two walking activities had a higher mean acceleration, and finally the library activity was again in between the two walking and freeform activities. So overall, as expected, we did see systematic differences in the structure of variability for the different activities, with similar activities exhibiting similar structures. And the post-hoc analyses confirmed that the similar activities were grouped together, such that overall the walking activities were generally whiter, the freeform activities were generally pinker, and the library activity was somewhere in between. And now here we have the results for the complexity matching. And overall, the cross-correlations observed for the actual pairs were significantly higher than the cross-correlations observed for both types of pseudo-pairs. And this was true for the cross-correlations for alpha values as well as for mean acceleration. However, what we see is that the cross-correlations for mean acceleration, in blue, varied significantly as a function of activity type, while the degree of complexity matching in red did not appear to be sensitive to these changes, indicating that the covariance in alpha values was a more stable and reliable method of indicating whether two individuals were behaving together regardless of their current activity. The full paper is freely available through scientific reports, and please feel free to contact us if you have any further questions. Thank you.